This is Ag Matters PM from the Iowa Agribusiness Radio Network, brought to you by the Iowa Soybean Association, your daily recap of the information that affects Iowa's farmers, producers, and consumers, right here in the heart of the heartland. With reports from our award-winning broadcast team of Dustin Hoffman and Riley Smith. Now, from the IARN studios in Des Moines, here's Dustin Hoffman.
Well, good day and welcome to Ag Matters PM from the Iowa Agribusiness Radio Network. I'm Dustin Hoffman. Today is Thursday, May the 5th. You can call it Cinco de Mayo, or if you partied too hard on Star Wars Day yesterday, we can call it Revenge of the 5th. Coming up today, we will be talking with Iowa Congresswoman Cindy Axne later on in the show about some reforms to cattle market transparency legislation. Riley Smith talks with Greg McBride of Allendale about the weekly export sales report. We also take a look at that ag weather outlook. But first, let's take a look at the markets. It's time now for the Ag Matters PM Closing Market Summary, your source for market analysis and settlement prices from the day's trade in Chicago, courtesy of the folks at agmarket.net. Well, we're here at the end of the trading day on Thursday, and let's talk with Brian Splitt of agmarket.net. Brian, how are you doing today?
I'm doing great. It was a doozy of a day in numerous ways today between equity trade, and I think one of the shining stars today was wheat.
All right, well, let's run it down and tell us what happened on that grain side of the equation.
Well, not too much happened in corn. We did finish a little bit higher on the old crop, a little lower on the new crop. Very tame day considering we had Kansas City wheat trading as much as 50 plus cents higher on the session. We had soybeans traded sharply higher overnight and then finished near their lows, only up a few cents on the day. But, I think the concern right now in wheat, and there was a little bit of talk about this the other day, but India, right? So with Ukraine unable to export wheat, the assumption and what was advertised by India 2 months ago was that they would be able to pick up the slack on the world for the world buyers and provide wheat for export. And since then, they've had some hot temperatures that have affected their wheat crop. And so there was a headline yesterday that they would potentially not be able to export wheat or would be limiting their wheat exports. And so now we've got some other areas out there that are expressing concern about their wheat crop, whether it's Pakistan or Indonesia, some smaller producers. Then we're looking at the spring wheat plantings, or I should say the inability to plant spring wheat in North Dakota and in Canada. And that really set this market on fire today.
And we've been looking at that wheat market. It's been kind of quietly been maneuvering things around out there. I mean, usually when wheat has a good day, everything kind of comes along for the ride, but and vice versa when it has a bad day. But, when we're talking about, one of the main exports for food grains, I mean, to have everybody kind of holding on to whatever they've got and not sure what supplies they're going to have. This is a lot of big dominoes to be falling here, all of them being pushed by what's happening in the Black Sea.
You're right. And so what we don't know is what the true size of the crop is in India. And some of the private estimates have worked down to as low as 95 million tons. I think some others are around 100, but not too long ago, we were thinking it'd be 108 to 110 million tons. And so that's truly the difference between India being able to export wheat and to pick up some of that slack from Ukraine to barely being able to satisfy their own domestic usage. And so that's going to be a big issue here for the world wheat market moving forward as we progress.
And Jim and I talked yesterday about, could we see more grain rationings? And we were talking about, obviously with corn and soybeans, we produce quite a bit. So, shutting down a complete export market for us is probably not going to be happening anytime soon. But what about on the wheat side? I mean, we're not a huge wheat. We produce a lot of wheat, but, in the I-states and stuff like that, we don't think about wheat. I mean, do we see us even kind of holding on to our own supplies?
I don't think so. I think what the U.S. has gotten used to being because of VSR, which is a variable storage rate, and that's typically what's provided a good amount of carry so the commercials can continue to just hold wheat and roll into a carry market. And we've gotten used to being kind of the wheat bank of the world where we've got quite a bit of it. And so if the if the world is going to take a more protectionist attitude, meaning some of these other countries just won't be able to export, I think the U.S. will be there to supply. Now, part of the concern, we had some pretty good rains run through Kansas, so I did have some clients that called me this morning, especially with the wheat board up, and said, hey, let's get some coverage. We got a rain and the crop is going to be better than maybe what we thought it was a few days ago. So I think we'll be there to export if the world needs it. But that would be really something if the U.S. took that stance of doing what other countries are doing and saying, you know what, we're going to hold these products for domestic usage instead of for export. And what would that do to futures values? I tend to think if we make that decision to hold product for domestic usage internally, that would be bearish for futures.
Now, we also have not talked at all about soybeans today. How did they fare?
So looking at July soybeans, and we'll paint a bit of a picture for the listeners. We had made some lows right after that quarterly stock and planting intention report at the beginning of April, and then we had a nice rally into late April. The lows that were scored yesterday were right at the 62% retracement, so a very technical pullback. And then what we did is we went right back up and kind of revisited the 38% retracement on the night session. And so it looks like maybe this bean market may consolidate a little bit. We've had a pretty good move, so we might need to chop around. I would say that 16.25 is going to be maybe your low end of the consolidative range. 1670-ish might be the upper end of that consolidative range. But as we progress into next week, we are going to get the first new crop balance sheets from the USDA. And they're also going to be giving us some revisions on old crop, mainly from the demand perspective. So we had another good week of old crop soybean exports. We feel that the USDA has enough to reduce the old crop carryout because of the export program that we've got right now. And if those reductions come to fruition, whatever they do on old crop will come right off the top of the new crop balance sheet. So one of the things moving forward, and again, we're going to be really looking at the weather scenario here, but it looks like there could be some extra acres moving towards soybeans in the Dakotas, potentially in Minnesota, just because of how wet it is and concerns about delayed planting. So we may pick up some extra acres. And if we do end up having a reasonable crop or a trendline yield crop, $15 is probably going to be a pretty good price come fall. So again, we're in that scenario right now where it really all comes down to summer weather once again.
All right, let's shift over to the livestock side of things. What did we see in cattle and hogs today?
Feeder cattle down today. That put some pressure on the live cattle. So we saw I've been focused mainly on the winter month live cattle, your December and your February contracts. We got within striking distance of contract highs again yesterday, a little bit of a pullback today with the weakness in the feeders. The feeder cattle had a nice rally off of very close to contract lows, and yesterday's highs were right up against the downtrend line. If you look at May and August feeders, we went to downtrend resistance, just couldn't get through that area, and now we've pulled back off of that level a couple bucks. You look at the lean hogs, and so we had talked about a head and shoulder top in the June lean hogs. And while we haven't necessarily met the measurement objective of that pattern, which would be in that 97, 98 area for June, we did fill a gap at 101.95. The 200-day moving average was right down there. So that was accomplished this week, and that was enough to give us a little bit of a bounce off of some oversold conditions back up into the 107s here. So good to see that. We talked about that in our technical webinar yesterday that we do every Wednesday with the idea that short term, this may be a good risk-reward area for the long side of June hogs.
All right. Well, a lot of great insight as always, Brian. If folks want to talk market strategies with all of you at agmarket.net, what's the best way for them to get in touch?
You can reach us at the general line. It's 844-424-6758. If you want to reach me directly, it's 815-665-0463. We've got a website, www.agmarket.net. And I would encourage you to get a free trial of our app to help you with your marketing. It's agmarket.app.
All right, Brian, we thank you for the insight and look forward to talking to you again real soon.
Appreciate it, Dustin. Thanks.
And that again was Brian Splitt of agmarket.net. Let's go ahead and run down those closing numbers, courtesy of the folks at Bar Chart. July corn closed up 3 1/4 at $7.97.5. December up 2 1/4 at $7.38.5. July beans up 6 1/2 at $16.47. November new crop up 5 1/4 at $14.91 3/4. July meal was up $1.70 at $4.19.90. Soy oil down 58 cents at $81.85. Chicago wheat up 30 cents at $11.06 1/2. Minneapolis wheat up 32 1/2 at $12.09 3/4. Kansas wheat up 53 3/4 at $11.77 even. Oats for July down 19 1/4 at $6.59 1/2. August live cattle were $1.05 lower at $136.02. May feeders $1.92 lower at $160.32. June lean hogs $1.97 higher at $107.07. Pork cutouts $1.50 higher at $113.55. And Class 3 milk was down a nickel at $24.25. And that's been your Ag Market Recap here on Ag Matters PM. We're going to take a short break and hear from our sponsors at the Iowa Soybean Association and the Soy Checkoff. When we come back, Riley Smith will look at the weekly export sales report. This is Ag Matters PM.
Iowa Soybean Association is driven to deliver for Iowa's 40,000 soybean farmers. We're proud to provide objective agronomic research, a helping hand with soil and water stewardship, and timely industry news powered by the Soybean Checkoff. Learn more at iasoybeans.com.
Welcome back to AM/PM from the Iowa Agribusiness Radio Network. I'm Dustin Huffman. The markets are worried about the global marketplace, especially around exports, and to be honest, it's been a little bit of a moving target. Riley Smith analyzed this week's export sales report with Greg McBride of Allendale and files this report.
Thanks, Dustin. We're on the phone with Allendale commodity broker Greg McBride for this week's U.S. export sales report. Greg, what came out on the numbers for this morning's report?
Well, it was a neutral affair. We had corn inside the range of estimates for old and new crop. Total came in at 1.52 million tons. Old crop, it was basically split down the middle, 783,000 tons for old crop, 738,000 tons for new crop. The beans came in 1.14 million tons. So that was as expected as well. 735,000 tons for old crop and 407,000 tons for new crop. Looking at the wheat, the meal, and the bean oil, all as well inside of the range of estimates. So no big surprises when it comes to the actual sales for this week.
Now, recently we've heard rumors that India may be banning or limiting their wheat exports. If these rumors turn out to be true, will we see the U.S. wheat market attempt to step up and fill in that gap?
We could see some increases in that aspect. We obviously been thinking that we would see some spillover from Russia and maybe Ukraine as well, because those are the number 1 and 5 exporters of wheat in the world. When you have India, who is one of the world's largest producers of wheat, cutting off exports, that obviously does give us an idea that we're going to see possibly some spillover buying here in the U.S. We are the number 2 exporter of wheat in the world. As of right now, we haven't seen anything. We don't even know if that is an accurate report. We heard yesterday that it was going to happen, and then we heard almost immediately after that was not the case. There was an official from the Indian government or the ag ministry over there that had said, no, that's not an issue. We're not talking about that. So a lot of times we get that, yes, they are, then we get the denial, and then a week or two later they actually confirm it.
Now, do you think we're seeing these prices because the wheat markets and really every grain market are excited to fill in any gap in the global supply that they can?
Yeah, definitely. And the biggest thing you have to remember, as we look at our prices and you see the wheat reacting to this, we are already talking about food crisis. We went through this back in 2007, 2008, right before the Great Recession as well, where we had wheat prices, rice, oat prices all go through the roof, and that is something that you've got to be watching right now, because you do have some of these major countries that are either big producers, big exporters, or both, that are tied up in other situations, whether it's a weather market or whether it's a war or anything like that. So there's concerns that span the whole globe at this point. And, Egypt being one of the biggest importers of wheat will be looking and, if you have disruptions in other places, it just continues to just pile on. And we run into further opportunities to see food prices go through the roof, as well as obviously our own commodity prices.
And even though this was a pretty mild report, do you have any advice for Iowa producers today?
Yeah, a lot of that is just earlier frosts, earlier freezes in Argentina that will take a crop and basically just shut it off. That finishes the growing cycle for them, and that is a problem. If you're not far enough along, you can also see some bean shatter in that situation as well. And then on the Brazil side of things with the dryness, that is a major concern that they've already faced at least once this year. So now we're going into the close of their harvest for the first crop, and trying to finish out their second crop corn, and that is a concern because obviously with drier temperatures they don't have the irrigation system that we normally would have. They also have a different type of soil, so that they need to see increased rains. And at this time of the year, this is when things do start to go drier for them anyway. So the fact that they are a little bit ahead might help, but it is not something you want to see to finish out that safrinha crop of corn.
Lots of great information as always, Greg. If our listeners want to get in touch and learn more, how do they do that?
They can call us at 800-2-MARKET. That's 800-262-7538.
And that was Greg McBride of Allendale here on Ag Matters PM. I'm Riley Smith.
Thanks, Riley. And now let's take a look at your ag weather outlook. We did see some rainfall late this morning and early this afternoon in the capital city. And of course, those rain chances will increase as the day goes on and into tonight. We could see the 80s and 90s in our forecast coming up next week. But for right now, let's see what the National Weather Service has in store for the next 24 hours. Well, taking a look at the forecast, we can see those showers are going to start to build in late this afternoon and into this evening. We've already seen some rainfall in the Des Moines area. And then we'll see those highs again topping out right around the mid-50s. Tonight, showers will continue to expand and get stronger here throughout the evening, and we'll see highs in the mid to upper 40s. Tomorrow, rain will continue for most of the day, except for in the western parts of the state where they should see sunshine poke through already before noon. But the rain will taper off slowly throughout the day, and we'll see highs in the upper 50s to the mid-60s. Taking a look at the affiliate weather map, we can see in Cherokee tomorrow looking for mostly cloudy skies and a few showers in 63. Shenandoah starting off with a few showers and then going to partly sunny skies in 66. Des Moines will see showers start to break up throughout the midday and a high of 65. Waterloo looks for showers and storms and a high of 61. Albia will look at showers and thunderstorms as well and 61. Clinton can look forward to showers and thunderstorms and a high of 58. For a more detailed forecast in your area, tune to your local Iowa Agribusiness Radio Network affiliate. That's been a check of your ag weather outlook. When we come back after this short break, I talk with Iowa Congresswoman Cindy Axne about some changes to cattle market transparency legislation. This is Ag Matters PM.
As we approach planting season, make sure you stay safe and share the road with your local farmers. Slow-moving tractors with large planters occupy a lot of space on the road, so stay patient and follow at a distance of around 50 feet. You should never, ever try to pass them at a bridge, intersection, hill, or curve. It's far better than putting yourself or someone else at risk. So please, stay safe and remember to tip your hat to your local farmer this planting season. This message was brought to you by your friends at the Iowa Agribusiness Radio Network.
Welcome back to AM/PM from the Iowa Agribusiness Radio Network. I'm Dustin Huffman. Yesterday, we were in Perry with Iowa Congresswoman Cindy Axne talking about some of her rural infrastructure initiatives, but I also had the chance to talk with her about some legislation that had come out only the day before. Her and 4th District Representative Randy Feenstra made some changes to some cattle market transparency legislation. And this was on the heels of the week before when both the House and Senate Ag Committees heard testimony in their chambers. I asked the Congresswoman where things are with this new version.
I'm feeling pretty good about this right now. After our hearings that we had, and I think there was a deep realization that, the Big Four are really sticking it, unfortunately, to places like Iowa. I do appreciate some of the jobs they're bringing here. I absolutely do. But unfortunately, when we're seeing, somewhere around 15,000 cattle producers leaving every single year, we know that we're in trouble. So, our bill is going to create that transparency. We're going to make sure that we have an opportunity to purchase from multiple markets. Obviously, the cash market's really important. And then it's going to put requirements on how much needs to be purchased and timeframes for delivery. So I feel real good at where we're at right now. We're getting a lot of traction in the Senate. I'm hoping this bill can come together, and I think the country's behind us. I'll be honest. They want to see local processing. They want to see opportunities in our local communities for beef production. And so I think we're on a pretty good path here, and we're going to keep pushing for it, Randy and I, along with Senator Grassley, and make sure that we get this done.
One of the concerns that came out of the testimony in the Senate Ag Chambers was about the Department of Justice's investigation into the Big Four meat packers. They started this investigation 2 years ago, and to quote NCBA President Don Schiefelbein, "We haven't heard squat." I asked Congresswoman Axne if Congress could put some pressure on the DOJ to find out where things are. I mean, if nothing else, let's just get an update. The Congresswoman said when they come back for session next week, she intends to ask the DOJ just those very same questions. And this isn't the last we're going to hear about cattle market reform. Riley Smith is scheduled to talk with Congressman Randy Feenstra early next week. And that's it for this edition of Ag Matters PM. We thank you for watching. You can find all our content online at iowaagnet.com. You can also follow us on social media on Facebook, Twitter, and all our video products as well as past episodes of AM PM are on our YouTube channel. Don't forget about our twice daily Ag Market podcasts. They're free of charge, and you can find them on Amazon, Apple, Google, Spotify, and Podbean. From the IARN studios in Des Moines, I'm Dustin Huffman. For Riley Smith, we thank you for watching. This has been Ag Matters PM.